More breaking news for you now. This out of the White House, where President Biden just wrapped a meeting with top cabinet officials where he announced plans to name someone from outside the administration, outside the Biden administration, to oversee implementation of the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. Let's discuss with Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Mr. Secretary, so obviously you just came out of that cabinet meeting with President Biden. Tell us about this individual that's going to be in charge of the money. Tell us more about that.
Well, so I know that'll be announced soon. The president laid out his clear and very high expectations. Now that Congress has authorized this major investment for us to use every penny of those tax dollars wisely and effectively. He was in charge of seeing to that in the Obama-Biden administration. He's very proud of the exceptionally low rate of waste and abuse that happened with the hundreds of billions of dollars of stimulus money that went out then. And he's made clear that he expects us to meet that same very, very high standard. A lot of responsibility on agencies like mine, but also the White House will be coordinating and leading on that accountability, just as they have with the American Rescue Plan. And we take that responsibility very seriously. So in addition to celebrating the passage of this historic bill, even before the signing has happened on Monday, already a real focus on that implementation, that execution, so that as we're funding those roads and bridges, as we're improving those ports and airports, the trains and transit, and all the other things in the bill, that every American has full confidence that it's going to be spent wisely and spent well.
How soon can the American people expect to see shovels going into the ground, broadband appearing in their communities, lead pipes replaced? How soon will the public see results?
Well, a lot of these dollars are going into programs that already exist. They're going into the formula that funds our highways. They're going into the discretionary grant programs that I can use to help support everything from a port improvement somewhere to a rail yard that needs to be adjusted to a city trying to make its streets safer. Other things, we're going to have to stand up whole new programs, dozens in my department alone, to effectively meet those infrastructure needs that have been building up since the Eisenhower era. One thing that's really important to remember is that this is not quite the same as that 2009 bill when the focus really was on what they called the shovel-ready projects, getting those dollars into the economy right away. Here it's about making sure that we do work right away and for the long run. I mean, this is really about investments that will define the 2020s. And so the focus is on shovel-worthy projects, things that are worth doing, sometimes accelerating things that are already underway, other times launching whole new efforts that are going to prepare us to compete and win in the rest of this century.
A lot of times, I regret to tell you, the U.S. government, in terms of its action, is sclerotic, slow-moving. We saw that happen with the rent relief program that passed last year to help individuals who were hit hard by COVID pay their rent, even if they were unemployed, and very little of it went out the door in time. We also saw that happen with COVID relief money going to states and cities that were slow to spend the money. A lot of it remains unspent. How can you ensure that that doesn't happen with $1.2 trillion? And you just talked about standing up new government projects.
Well, that's where we've got to build on the success of our best programs and make sure that we have the right kind of nimble approach to get these things done. The good news is we have a lot of state and local partners who are poised and ready to put these dollars to work. Remember, when you've got a bridge in your community that has been decaying for years, when you know exactly what it would mean for your airport to come up to speed with the best airports in the country or in the world, when you've got a port that needs a lot of investment, often the plans have been drawn up for a long time. Sometimes the applications have been ready to go and gone into my office. I'm going through one set right now where we have something like $1 billion to work with for $10 billion worth of applications. And some of those communities have come back again and again and again with good projects, but have been turned away because it just didn't quite meet the cut. So I have every confidence that there are good projects ready to go, but also, again, working with the White House, we're going to have a very, very high threshold of accountability, of transparency to make sure that it's done efficiently, and to make sure that we're really using those taxpayer dollars in a way that makes the absolute most of them. It's big dollars, but that doesn't mean that there's any room for slack. Because there's always another good project worth doing that we can't if we didn't get the absolute most out of the dollars for this one.
How are you going to ensure the accountability? Are you going to have the Department of Transportation Inspector General have oversight over it? I mean, no offense to you, I'm sure you mean it, I'm sure you're sincere, but there needs to be some sort of oversight responsibility that actually has the power to find things out.
That's right.
And call it out publicly, right?
That's right. You know, the Inspector General Office, which functions in an independent way, is going to be an important part of the accountability and implementation. So the General Accountability Office that has interagency responsibility. Again, I know that the White House will be checking in early and often, as they have on the rescue plan, to make sure that things are going the right way. And I can tell you that I will personally be looking at everything that's going on to make sure that we're really getting this right. Even before the bill has been signed, we've set up an executive policy committee that just have another meeting actually as we speak with my colleagues, the deputy secretary, the undersecretary, heads of all the different agencies, from the Federal Rail Administration to the folks getting those highway dollars out. We take this very seriously because, you know, this is an opportunity also to build confidence in the ability of our administration to get things done. There's already been, I think, a huge leap over the sometimes low expectations of today's Washington, you know, vindicating the president's belief that you really can get major legislation even through today's divided Congress. Now we got to have the administrative equivalent of that, which is also beating expectations of anybody skeptical the government can deliver.
Well, let's talk about the government delivering on something else, supply chain issues, which you are also responsible for in part. Last month, the Biden administration announced that the two largest U.S. ports, the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach, both in California, that they would operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to speed things up. There's still a backlog, as you know. A record 111 container ships remain stuck off the California coast. President Biden had announced the 24/7 project would last 90 days, but the head of the Los Angeles port told us a few weeks ago that this isn't going to be fixed in 90 days. It's going to take well into 2022. How long until we don't see 111 container ships off the coast of California and the supply chain issues are on their way to being fixed?
Well, look, a lot of these are, of course, a consequence of the pandemic. And as long as the pandemic continues, there will be pandemic-driven shortages, which is why the best way to fix that is to end the pandemic. But there are actions that we can take and have been taking that are making a difference. The President's Port Action Plan came out earlier this week, lining up things from having sweeper ships go up, clearing up some of the empties, to having fines for companies that have their containers sitting there in the way, making it harder for another ship to come in and take advantage of a port. We even have funding now. We've given some flexibility so that they can create what are called pop-up container yards in Georgia and North Carolina. The idea here for the Port of Savannah is that if you have the containers piling up on that precious portside real estate, move it inland and sort it out there rather than waiting for it to get sorted out on the acreage of the port. So a lot of creativity. It is making a difference, but make no mistake, as long as we have major global imbalances between supply and demand, as long as we have a pandemic poking holes in supply chains in every part of the world, we're going to continue to see challenges, which is why we are working the short, medium, and long-term means of dealing with this issue.
All right, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, on a personal note, I'd like to say we're also happy that Joseph and Penelope, your new babies, are home and doing well. Thank you so much. And,
Thank you.
And we're all so glad for you.
Thanks. We're very relieved.